Hi, I'm Milo Denison.
And I'm Kev Bamboo, and this is Rip It Up.
Rip It Up is a topical show about life impacting creatives around the world today.
Yeah, and on tonight's show, we're joined by folk singer-songwriter Hattie Whitehead, where we'll be discussing the subject of dealing with grief. And Hattie will also be performing a couple of songs for us tonight too. Later on, we're also joined by a grief recovery specialist as well. But before we get into the show, Milo, we're already into spooky season. Have you ordered your Halloween outfit yet?
Ordered my Halloween. I'm knitting it from scratch.
Really? I'm
No,
impressed.
not really. It's on my to-do list to think about Halloween costumes. Yeah, I'm one of those people that I'm a last-minute Halloween costume person. So I'll literally be like, okay, Halloween's tomorrow. What can I track down in between now and tomorrow to turn into a Halloween costume?
What can I find in the cupboard?
Exactly. That'll be me.
You can't go as a box of Cheez-It again.
No. I might just go as a box. I might just put a box on and be a box this year. Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Cool.
All right. So let's talk to Hattie here, since that's the thing we're looking forward to. So welcome to the show. And I guess just tell us a little bit about yourself. What got you into singing?
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's really nice to be here, virtually. I'm a singer-songwriter, and I am from Southwest London, from Richmond, born and raised. And my dad was a musician, and my dad is a musician, and my mum was a poet. And so I grew up listening to lots of jazz music that my dad had on in the house, and lots of folk music through my mum's taste, and that ended up being a really nice combination for what I got into in my sort of later years, because I think I'm kind of a folk artist predominantly, but I sort of draw on other genres as well, and kind of sort of jazz inflections, I suppose.
That's interesting, because a lot of people, they kind of go the opposite of what their parents listen to. So I think music my parents played when I was a kid, I'm like, I still am traumatized by it. But you actually are influenced by it in a lot of ways. So that's really nice.
Yeah, I mean, I do have memories of my dad trying to sit me down at the piano and teach me music theory and the cycle of fifths, and being like, Dad, this is so boring. And now I really wish I'd listened, but but yeah, I think they both had really good taste in music, and so lots of the artists that I grew up listening to kind of carried on into being my favorite artist. Like Joni Mitchell is probably my favorite artist of all time and favorite songwriter. And my mum was a huge fan of hers and would play her music loads in the house. So yeah, it was a good setup.
Nice.
No, it is. I mean, it's always interesting listening to people's journey, kind of just how they get into their creativity as well. And you, from a very, very young age, obviously, parents, incredibly creative. I mean, your dad, I've heard some of his stuff before, just an incredible sax player. Being privileged to see him live as well, Milo, playing just this really small impromptu gigs as well, and such a great joy. And of course, his mum as well was an incredible writer as well. I mean, and I'm sure some of the inspiration for a lot of your work as well, just growing up, having those influences around, is what a great not really a head start, just what a great influence to have around you.
Yeah, and it was nurtured in us as well. So, we were always we weren't pushed into playing music or anything like that, but it was just, we were encouraged where we were interested, So I would make up songs on the spot. So my dad sat me down at the tender age of 2 and played guitar while I made up songs, jumping on his bed. And it's just things like that kind of really gave me sort of, I guess, a good association with music, really.
Wow, that's fantastic. Can we swap parents? So jealous.
He's like, no, I want this.
Yeah.
There's enough to go round, guys. I'm sure they won't mind.
No, I mean, yeah, and as well as that, because obviously, so you would have been involved in so many things, as a young child as well, creatively, which would have naturally you would have had things like, being involved in things at school and choirs and stuff like that. I imagine because, as you say, from 2, you was already pretty well invested. You was almost singer-songwriter at 2, in some respects, because that was already being, like say, nurtured there.
Yeah.
So what was it like when you was kind of going, doing the kind of like developing your creativity? So like kind of like transitioning from just being like a singer to then eventually obviously a singer-songwriter, because, you were doing lots of performances and things like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, I mean, my debut album being at 2 years old was a sort of high point of my younger years. And then I became an embarrassed teenager and didn't do any writing. So, I mean, I properly started writing music after I had started teaching myself to play guitar when I was about 21. I think I'd just finished uni. And the transition, I mean, until then, I had been singing throughout my teenage years and, singing in all the sort of Christmas concerts at school and stuff like that. And music was always something that I just knew that it would always be sort of where I would probably sort of what I would gravitate towards. But yeah, when I started writing, it was amazing, really, because I had wanted to do it for a long time, and it felt like suddenly something opened up when I had taught myself to play an instrument that I could accompany myself on, and then the songs came like thick and fast, and it's just sort of empowering, it's an outlet for lots of thoughts and feelings. So yeah, I had a lot to say at that point, I think.
I can imagine. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, it was great, and it also kind of provided me with like a way of expressing myself that was a bit less direct than saying the difficult things one-on-one in a conversation to someone, So
yeah, not only a way of like processing your creativity, but also, like I say, getting off certain things that are, like say, going through that kind of time frame as well.
It's cathartic. It feels like a form of therapy to me, really.
Yeah, I think a lot of music, that's one nice thing about a lot of musicians too, is that they're able to express themselves that way, and and really kind of get that emotion through the song and the music and stuff that a lot of other people really can't. And I think that's why, as humans, we're drawn to music, because it evokes that emotion in us that maybe like we can't express, but that means, somebody else has expressed that and you can kind of relate to it. That's, the love songs, the songs of loss, the happy songs of good times and that kind of stuff. So there's that emotional connection that we can all relate to, which I think is why everybody, listens to music.
And that is the magical thing about a song, is that, it can mean something wildly different to one person than it means to the next. And I'm quite often a bit reluctant to talk about exactly what my songs are about, because I like that element of music that someone can listen to it and sort of make it apply to their own life,
Yeah, that makes sense. That's good.
Yeah, kind of leaving a little bit of ambiguity sometimes in there, and obviously other times maybe not, but you can giving people a chance to interpret your lyrics that that might, as you say, when they relate to something that you've written, they may well be interpreted in a totally different way that you initially wrote it as well, which is always, I find that quite interesting in music as well, the way different people will take a piece of music and they'll be like, oh yeah, this means this to me.
And debate about it with other people, like, oh no, this means that. Oh no, it means that. That's what they really meant in this song. So Hattie, so in regards to like the emotions that come through music, how would you say your music has helped you with like tougher areas in your life then?
So I mean, probably the biggest one is going through grieving my mum. My mum died 5 years ago, and actually writing music about it. I mean, it didn't come immediately. I always find I need to sort of sit with things and let them kind of like sort of mull them over a bit first. But yeah, after a while, I started writing about her, and it was a sort of an easier way of talking about it all than a really intense conversation being had at the pub with someone about it all, you know. And yeah, I mean, as I've said already, that it's an outlet. It's like it's an outlet for what's going on in my head and in my heart. So yeah, it just gave that to me, really. And I've worked on a few projects. I mean, most of which just sort of my own releases, but one of which was my sister's project over lockdown, which was focusing on grief. And she got four or five different artists from. She had like a dancer and an illustrator, like and what else? An actor, and everyone came up with a piece about kind of what a different element of grief, and it really made me think about it and see it in a different way, and talking to other people kind of helped that along as well. It kind of helps you sort of view it from a different perspective. So yeah, I kind of got this new relationship with grief because I was talking about it in my piece as being a friend, which I'm able to see now 5 years on. It was a bit harder at first, but yeah, it's kind of that and the conversation with people that really helps. And I think talking about music is a good place to start, and then you can, you know, go from there and talk about the difficult things as well.
Yeah, I think having kind of not just other creative people, but having those other people to like bounce off as well, and you know, they're telling us. You know, we know music is always about telling stories, as is much of creativity. So actually being able to convey something very difficult via a story, whether music, say art, dance, whatever, is really, you know, really reflective for everyone involved, because it really gives you different dynamics there, because you're looking at it, like you say, from one element, just, you know, outwardly, but then also you're looking at it again from, you know, several other angles, which you may well have never even, you know, anticipated or even, you know, thought about at all before. And it's always interesting anyway, just kind of having people share things, because some people do obviously find grief difficult to talk about. Sometimes they might not even, you know, they might not even know that they're going through any grief at all, even if they're right in the middle of it. It's just, you know, that could be like an acceptance thing, or just purely down to the fact they don't realise that what they're actually going through is a really tragic time, because it might not just be related to, say, the loss of a family member via, say, death. It could be many other versions of grief which also come into it, which we will talk about that a little bit more later on in the show when our grief recovery specialist joins us for a short period, and they'll talk a little bit more way above me in terms of like the many more kind of levels of grief as well. But basically we're going to go to our kind of like, we do a public response survey every time we do an episode, and it always focuses on the main topic that we're doing. So we've literally put a really easy, well, we'll say an easy opening question to them, which is to ask them, what does grief mean to you, and do you consider it a taboo subject? We had like some little kind of simple answers for them to go through, and then we could let them expand on it and give them a few comments as well. So like, yes, grief is taboo for me. I don't usually talk publicly about it. And we had around about a quarter of our responders actually say, you know, they ticked that box. And then
wow, that many.
We had, yeah, 20, well, just over, 26 and a bit %.
Huh.
I was quite surprised in some ways. The next one I expected to be higher. And it was no grief should be talked about with no stigma attached at all. Because obviously in that, like, if we go back maybe like 20, 30 years, there probably would have been more people saying, the yes element, if you know what I mean, rather than the no element. And so today, obviously, that should be higher because people do tend to talk about things a lot more and are quite open and frank. And then we just had also an other one, because they may have been like, somewhere in the middle of all of that. And that was, so we had, 25, 26% on the yes. We had 46, 47 on the no. And then other was also 20, 26, 27%. And the comments there, so we had some really, really interesting comments, actually. I'd love to read them all because there's tons. So literally, right, let me just find them. Right, okay. And so someone put, I've answered no, but understand for many it's a yes. Having lost my wife a few years back and living on my own for a while without any family close by, I found it really hard to talk about things. There were people that offered to talk, but it's very difficult to discuss those things with people you work with. So that was somebody who's obviously compromised by their situation. Clearly, they obviously wanted to talk about it, but they actually felt that the stigma maybe within their own personal environment didn't allow them to open up as much. I'll read a few more. Someone put, everyone will experience grief at some point in their life, and therefore it should be talked about with no stigma, which was kind of pretty much answered the initial part of the question. I'll read us two more on that. Grief should be talked about more openly. It shouldn't be taboo. However, everyone processes grief differently. So respecting others' ways of dealing with grief and helping to educate children how to deal with grief from an early age is important. Recognizing that grief comes in many forms and isn't just about bereavement, but all losses. Probably similarly as I mentioned a little bit earlier on, there's several things, like I say, I suppose it's probably one of those things we don't just, it doesn't initially, even though at some point, if we even just take, say, passing away element, at some point we know that someone we love is going to, pass away or will pass away before then. Obviously, when there's other factors involved, that's a little different, but we never or there doesn't seem to be as much, although we will talk about things post, we don't seem to prepare ourselves, do we, for those moments so much. They seem to kind of like not be discussed too much. We'll talk about things that have happened, but not, like it's an adult conversation almost with your kids or with younger people, and to say, this is, this is going to happen at some point, and these are maybe like kind of tools that you can use to deal with those moments, and therefore it doesn't mean that accept it and everyone just turns into some kind of robot that goes, okay, everyone I love's just disappeared now, right, I'll just carry on, that's it. But in a general sense, they can be equipped with those tools. So I'll read one more, and then I'll bounce this back to you guys as well, and we'll have a little bit of a discussion about it. So we have, it has to be up to the individual whether they wish to discuss their grief, but it should not have any stigma attached either way. So some similar comments kind of coming in across the board on there. So Hattie, essentially, I'll ask you the same question. What does grief mean to you, and do you consider it a taboo subject?
I think we're getting there slowly but surely. I think it depends probably what generation you're in, depending on sort of how much you talk about it. I think there's definitely a lot more awareness around mental health now than there probably would have been in, like, say, my parents' generation or grandparents' generation. So I think it's definitely improving, and people are sort of much more readily going to various types of therapy now. I went to bereavement counselling and I found it really helpful, and I actually just carried on seeing her for about a year after. But I think I actually think the reason that it feels like there's a stigma often tends to be, in my experience, that people that haven't necessarily gone through a huge loss in their life don't want to say the wrong thing and don't want to sort of, in inverted commas, upset the person that's going through grief. And actually, the reality of it is that nothing can really make it, in my case, nothing could make it worse, really. No one could say anything to make it worse. No one was going to sort of come to me and say, oh, I'm really sorry that your mum died. And I was suddenly be like, oh my God, I forgot about that. You know, like, it's not going to remind me. Yeah. It's something that I just lived with and still live with. And but actually the not talking about it thing was for me part of the problem, because it creates loneliness amongst people that are going through that kind of experience. And actually talking about it to people helped me a lot. And actually hearing from people that had gone through similar things was really helpful as well. Like, I put out a music video that was about loss, and I got like the most beautiful messages from people like all around the world, like people from over in the States and people in South America saying that they had lost someone and that they had found it really therapeutic watching the video. And that was like completing the cycle of making music to me, was it helping somebody else and, you know, them relating to you know, the content of it. And it actually really helped me and my grieving process as well, because you kind of establish this sort of conversation with other people. So you're on your own with your particular circumstance, but the broader picture is that actually we all go through it. We all will go through it at some point. So it's, you know, it's a really universal thing. So it's something that should be talked about a lot more.
No, I really love that you used the music actually there, you know, in obviously a positive way as well, for, you know, to the benefit of other people, which is incredible. But yeah, Milo, what were your thoughts on the opening question?
Yeah, can I ask Hattie, if it's okay, what happened to your mother?
She died of cancer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've known so many people that have died from cancer. It's ridiculous. So I guess my thoughts on it fall into the process it however you want. The issue I have sometimes is people tell you how you should process grief. Did you have that experience, Hattie? Like, people would be like, you know what you need to do is you need to do this, or this is how you should deal with this. And it's like, yeah, great, thanks for the advice, but how about just shut the fuck up, you know? Do what I want. So I guess that's my response to that. It's weird. I've had since we've been in this COVID lockdown, my uncle, my aunt, and my grandfather have all died, and I haven't been able to go to any of their funerals because we've been, you know, excluded from traveling to the US the whole time.
Yeah. Nice.
So it's just it's weird how things like that force you to process, because then you're like, oh, you know, like with my grandfather, you know, it was that time in his life. I mean, so I'm not grieving over the fact that he's gone because he lived a long, good life. I'm grieving over the fact that I wasn't able to actually go and be there, you know, like that kind of stuff. But it is weird how people tell you like, oh, this is what you should do. And it's like, you know, I'll deal with it in my own way.
Yeah.
If I want your help, I'll ask, you know.
There was a few things that people said to me that I found a bit difficult as well. Like, she's gone to a better place now, which I know is meant with love, and it's meant to comfort someone. I think that's the mistake some people make, is that they feel like they need to, you know, at least she's gone somewhere better. But actually, you know, that didn't help me. It might help some people, but I was like, no. I mean, it depends on what you believe in, but I don't believe that.
Thanks for assuming that's my beliefs.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is it's another dynamic, of course, with the whole COVID thing, like Milo touched on, with so many people not being able to start an initial process of grief, and in this case, obviously via, you know, a funeral because of a death, which, like I say, that just adds another layer onto everything. I mean, our family were fairly lucky. I say lucky in the sense that we could go and my uncle died on Christmas Eve. So in the January of this year, we was lucky enough to be able to go and, actually go to, celebrate his life, even in limited kind of, circumstances. But of course, for many people, especially people like Milo and probably millions of others that, living far apart from people and just totally restricted from anything. I mean, I can't imagine of that initial kind of step that, being able to kind of like, that when people, I don't really like the phrase of like, the closure kind of thing, because it shouldn't really be a closure as such, but so many people term it that way. Doing that, say, on a screen or whatever, because I don't know, Milo, was you able to watch the funeral?
No, anything like that. No.
Right. So I've heard a lot of things like that in the UK, that people have been too far away, or they can't travel, or too ill, or whatever. The places put up a recording so that they can essentially be virtually there. But again, I don't know how. I haven't had to do that, fortunately, but I don't know how that would work. I don't for myself.
That would just seem awkward to me, truthfully. I don't know about you guys, but I think part of the aspect of like, if you're going to the service or whatever, is having those interactions with your friends and families and stuff, and you can't do that through a screen. Yeah. So I don't know. That's just my opinion. I mean, I'm sure obviously other people disagree because they do that, so which is fine.
Yeah, it's like not being able to be there as well sort of must add a whole new sort of dimension to it all as well, really, because that's what you need to do when you're grieving, is you need to like huddle with your close people. Yeah. Don't you?
God, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, should we maybe listen to some music? Hattie? You want to play us a little ditty?
Sure.
So what's the name of the song?
I think I'm gonna play a song called Mechanism.
Okay.
And it's from my EP that's not out yet, but that is coming out very soon. I stand here alone, singing songs about somebody I don't know. Though the music moves right through my lips, there's nothing in my soul. Is this the way I'll go? I stand here alone, making plans about a future unknown. Though there's blood that's running through my veins, my heart's an empty shell. Is this the way I'll go? 'Cause now I'm lost, and all I am is a head that's filled with grief and worry. I'm lost, there's no way that I can let you in. Now I'm lost, and all I am is a mechanism to keep coping. There's no way I'll let you in. I lie here alone, dreaming dreams about somebody that I know. Though I know she isn't here in life, I feel her in my bones. Bones show me where to go. 'Cause now I'm lost, and all I have is a head that's filled with grief and worry. I'm lost, way that I can let you in. Now I'm lost, and all I am is a mechanism to keep coping. There's no way I'll let you in.
Wow,
It's gorgeous.
beautiful,
Thanks.
Hattie,
Yeah.
beautiful.
That's
Thank
coming
you.
out on your next CD, you said?
Yeah, next EP. We don't have a release date yet, but we're working on it.
All right. I am absolutely
cool.
buying that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. No, I was getting goosebumps there. Actually, it was literally just I was away. I was gone with it. Yeah.
Oh, thank
So
you.
cool.
It feels like a relevant song to play.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
works. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, it really,
Yeah, as
really
we're-
did.
Talking about grief.
Really-
And, yeah, that's nice.
It
Way to
really
keep the
fits
mood
so
up.
nicely.
Yeah, no, sorry about that.
But we probably are gonna. The mood is gonna raise a little bit now, anyway, because we are about to go on to one of our mini features here, which for you, Hattie, you now get to turn the tables, and you get to ask an American. So you get to ask Milo a totally unscripted question, and I hope you've got something that's really going to test him.
Yes, so I found it really hard to think of a question. Like, when you can ask someone anything, what the hell do you ask them?
Exactly. Yeah. And you have access to Google. You want to know, you can find out.
Yeah, but I considered asking you how to make a good cup of tea. But I think you probably know how to do that because Kev told me that you've lived in Ireland and in England, so two of the main tea countries.
Yes, and I am a tea drinker actually too.
Ah,
so,
really?
yes,
Okay.
So,
So actually, I thought because I know that you're an actor as well, I would ask you how your accents are and see if you'd be up for doing some accents.
my accents are atrociously bad.
Yes.
They
Yay!
really are. I was taking lessons for a while on doing a British accent, but she stopped teaching. Or she'll teach on occasion, but
Was she really that difficult to teach?
no.
Was that the problem?
She's actually just been busy with work, so I had nothing. Yeah, I mean, maybe she's still teaching, and she's like, Milo, I can't help you out at all. What was funny is when I was younger, I was pretty good at accents. I could pick them up pretty quick, but now not so much. And it's harder because you don't. If I lived in a place where I heard a consistent accent, I could pick it up. But like here in London, there's so many regional accents, and there's so many people from other countries, so you don't hear a consistent one. Or it was the same within Ireland. There's so many different accents that you can't really pick up a good one. No, my accents are atrociously bad.
Okay, well, can we get you to say like one sentence? And I'm going to go with something like easy, like my kind of accent.
Okay.
I think that's quite easy.
Oh, you've gone really.
What
You've
do
gone
you want me to
so
say?
easy.
Oh, well, Kev, you can get involved in here if you want. Like, if you want to make this harder.
Force the issue a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I might force the issue a little. But
Yeah.
we'll go with the kind of southwest London kind of.
A southwest London kind of accent. No, I think mine is more of a posh British accent, but not a very good one because I do occasionally pronounce the R's, even though I should not be pronouncing the R's. And I emphasize the A's, maybe just a little too much. I think my British accent more or less just sounds like I'm bored and uninterested in anything anyone has to say. How's that?
It was pretty good.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, it did. It definitely
was.
sounded posh. It definitely sounded posh.
Yeah. So
we'll
my
give you
British
that.
accent is a posh. I'm just kind of a snob and have no interest in anything anyone's telling me. I'm too good for this. I don't bother
I
with
think
an accent.
there was kind of little. I think there's not much you need to work on with that to tweak it, because I think that was just some vowel changes slightly, and it made you a little bit. It made you sound, I don't know, what would be kind of like posh standard South African at times. There was tiny little tweaks in there that brought that in.
Yeah.
But
I'll just start using it regularly, and people will be like, "Where are you from?" And I'll be like, "South Africa," and they'll be like, "Oh, okay."
Oh,
they want
sure,
that.
Like South Africa lived with the Queen for a little bit as well, and it's just all kind of melded into this. So I reckon, Milo, I'm going to say, actually, right, let's think of one, because you guys, you like Scotland. You spent a little bit of time up there.
Oh,
I'm not going to make
Scotland! I can do a Scotland accent. You go up to Scotland and you see yourself the Loch Ness Monster, and you have yourself a whiskey. It's fantastic up in Scotland in the Highlands.
I'd love to get you to do, because I know you're not a performing monkey and all that, but
that was
I'm going to get you to do. Yeah, I think your English one was better.
I think it sounded kind of Irish.
Get you to do a Birmingham accent.
I have no idea what a Birmingham accent is. Do a Birmingham accent for me, and I'll just mirror you.
Okay, so it'd be like, all right there, Duck, would you like a cup of tea now?
Oh, right there, love. Would you like a cup of tea now?
That's
not too
sounded
bad.
really
Irish. That sounds more
Irish.
Irish, actually.
Yeah, it was really Irish.
Uh-huh.
Would you like a cup of tea?
Would you like a cup of tea? No, go have some. Would you
like a cup of tea? Because I'm full to the brim with tea.
Yes, we'll go have a pint. What's the crack, everybody?
I think the Brummie accent it's all in like the intonation, isn't it? It's like
Yeah.
die. Like,
Well, now absolutely kind of like killing any Birmingham person.
yeah. Oh, sorry, guys.
So she's like, no, yeah, sorry, Birmingham people, Scottish people.
Love your accent.
Irish, British, basically everyone.
Yeah, just everyone. Let's just trash
Any other
everybody.
accents you want me to destroy?
I actually love the Brummie accent. I find it like really like pleasing, and I think it's very friendly sounding as well.
I think it's a very interactive accent. There's a lot of movement with their accent. It's as well as the mouth, but also just on the whole is. You can get so involved in it. Like Milo, I'd say if you want an accent to really kind of get your kind of chops around, literally, then a Brummie one would be a good one. And probably a Geordie, a Newcastle accent as well, or at least a northeast kind of accent.
That's a hard one.
That's going to be a hard one.
Yeah. I'm not going to do mine.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's move off of that subject and on to our next one, which is, of course, our badly drawn bamboo. So, Hattie, being creative that you are, you have a badly drawn bamboo for us.
I do. I've actually done it on my iPad because I've got one of those
sweet.
pens.
Electronic. We haven't had anyone.
Excellent.
Yeah, we haven't in a digital version yet.
And it's
I'm
like
always so excited to see these. To be fair, literally, it's my favourite part.
it's like actually you're wearing the same hat that you're wearing now, which is pretty good.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's like a mixture of like, oh no, can you see it? Okay.
Oh, yeah,
No, that's perfect. Yeah,
that's actually pretty good. The hair coming down the sides, you need to pull your hair down out there a bit more.
It used to be at one point.
Yeah.
Like several years ago, it did used to be like really long, curly, blonde. So
it was actually inspired by current you and the you that like we met in the silly hours when you had like long curly blonde hair. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like full vagrant surfer kind of meld mashup. Yeah.
Was it was it dyed blonde?
No. Well, it was
It was naturally blonde.
Sun and sea salt bleached essentially.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, man. Literally.
You've also got rosy cheeks in this because
because
you used to work on the ferry, did you? But did you work on the ferry?
Well, I worked on the campsite mostly, but I'd help the guys out from time to time as well. So I'd just be, luggage
sunshine.
monkey, just yeah. But no, so hold it up again because I want to. I've got to rate this.
Right. Okay.
And it's kind of
how I imagine this. By the way, is just the part coming out is bleached blonde. I imagine you just always wearing the hat, so like the hair under the hat is going to be dark, exactly, and then just the side bits are going to be bleached blonde.
The hair is actually attached to the hat.
It's one of those,
the hat on
it's
there
those,
with it.
The Scottish hat that you get.
Perfect.
Like the little tartan jobs with the orange hair sticking out. Wow, because to me it's almost like a modern take on, like a tapestry, like when you see like buy a tapestry and stuff, and you've got these random characters that are there in the background. It's got a very, the beard. My beard is quite boxy because it's so tight.
I actually got the length there. The length is quite good actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you're pretty bang on.
Yeah, perfect.
Bang on. I literally can't rate this as a badly drawn bamboo. I can't give it a low rating. So, which is what I'm really wanting to do. But it's fantastic. I'm going to give that an 8 out of 10. Actually, 8.5.
So shouldn't it be a 2?
I'll take that.
Well, yeah, in some ways, would it be a 2 or 1.5? I don't know. That's up for debate.
Because it's a goodly drawn, not a badly drawn. So shouldn't you have a lower score?
Yeah, I'm going to have to think about this kind of rating process. I keep getting it wrong, but it was great. I like it. Yeah, but it did remind me of like a tapestry kind of drawing as well at the same time. So.
Yeah, that was my inspiration too. Yeah, I was going for that.
Yeah, the bio tapestry was my inspiration. Okay, no, that was an absolutely fantastic drawing. And I always love these. So we're heading back to the public response survey and also introducing to this show a grief recovery specialist, April. So April, welcome to the show and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Hi, thank you for having me. As Kev mentioned, I'm a coach, and part of the coaching that I do is some neuro-linguistic practice methods, cognitive behavioural hypnotherapy, and grief recovery is an area that I specialise in, and was born out of really actually me attending a grief recovery course myself to help me deal with some of my own grief and loss, which was predominantly around miscarriage. And what I actually found as a result of that was that grief and loss was about so much more than bereavement, which we typically associate grief with. So many different losses. So children experience 20 or so losses before the age of around 10 years old. That might be the loss of a pet. It might be that a friend's moved house or moved school. It could be that they have lost their favourite toy. Things that seem very simple at an early age, but actually have a hugely profound impact on how we deal with grief and loss later in life. So when I went on this programme for my own personal development, what I realised was that there wasn't just one loss that I was dealing with. There was a whole lifetime of losses that I actually had never processed or become complete with. And I decided that actually I felt that this was a gift that needed to be shared with the world, that everybody could benefit with learning some steps and a program to help process grief and loss. So that's how it came about. And that's kind of what I focus on now and work with a lot of different people to deal with many different types of grief.
Cool. No, that's really, really great. It really links in well with our next topic. And we were touching on other areas of grief earlier on in the show, because obviously predominantly most people, it's usually to do with, like you say, bereavement, but there are so many, which is why we've got you in to talk on this little segment. But we had a public response survey that goes out every episode. We've already kind of touched on one question earlier on, which is our kind of like gentle opener for people, which is basically what does grief mean to you, and do you consider it a taboo subject? But then we kind of led them on to the next question, which was, have you knowingly suffered with grief? And if so, how do you tend to approach, deal, or process it? We gave them a couple of Initial answers, and then give them a chance to expand on that as well. So the options for them were, I have suffered with grief, and then I'm going to comment on how I approach it. And then I don't think I have suffered with grief. And then we also had other. And unsurprisingly, and I think most would probably see that there was a good 94% that have said that I have suffered with grief. And then we had a few others that just said other, but no one actually ticked the I don't think I have. So it's good that everyone that took part in our survey, and again, we've had tons of respondents, they all obviously acknowledge that they have suffered grief at some point. So that was interesting. I'm going to read a few of the comments from that as well, and then what I'll do is I'll bounce that back to all of us as usual. So let me find some of these comments. Okay, so we've got somebody said, I lost both of my parents when I was fairly young, not as a child. And I think I handled it quite well at the time, but I still can't remember my parents without feeling like crying many, many years on. And we've got somebody said, I spent years distracting myself and focusing on helping others before it all finally caught up with me. And I've since been diagnosed with PTSD, depression, and anxiety. We've got another person said, not recently, but I've lost a very close friend and a very special ex-girlfriend, both young mothers, both to DVT. I think they mean deep vein thrombosis, I think, as well as my father to lung cancer, all 25 years or so ago. I don't approach grief, rather it approaches me. I carry on privately with regard to my innermost hurt and emotions at work, at home, in supporting others. Anger turns to bafflement, pain softens into regret, and regret is eventually at least joined by gratitude. I'm an object of grief, and I'd not be comfortable choosing how to approach it. Sometimes you have to suffer alone. I do try to be supportive to others, however, which that is a really interesting and in-depth comment there. I'm going to read a couple more, and then I'll bring it back, because there are so many, and I would love to obviously do them the honor of reading all of them, but it's just time. So we also got somebody else said that they keep busy, and they was fortunate they had a couple of things that got them out of the house and in contact with others. Without that, they didn't know if they would have got through it at all. And then one of the last ones I'm going to read is this one. Like most of us, a lot of grief I experienced as a child, moving house, loss of friends, loss of pets, breakup of relationships, etc., weren't handled well. Not because it was anyone's fault, but because we aren't taught how to deal with it differently. As I've got older, I deal with it differently, and I'm able to recognize it in myself and others and give it the time and energy that it deserves. So I'm going to come back to you, Hattie, actually, with that, and I'm going to ask you that question. Would you like me to relay the question?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So essentially, have you knowingly suffered with grief? And if so, how do you tend to approach, deal, or process it? Or in this case, how have you tended to approach, deal, or process it?
Yeah. I mean, yes, I have kind of gone through grief. It's actually interesting hearing about there being like different types of grief and loss. And so I've always just associated it with losing my mum 5 years ago. Yeah, I mean, that was the kind of the giant one, really, I suppose. But I've dealt with it by going to counselling, and I speak to my family about it. We're all quite close and we all talk about it quite openly. And I have found that it's become an easier thing to live with as I have become a bit more open about talking about it. And it's probably made me a better person, to be honest, because it's made me better at talking about difficult things. It was something that I was always very afraid to talk about people before. I would just put it into a song before and not talk about it at all. Whereas now, I think I'm probably slightly better at about addressing like difficult issues, and about talking to other people about their difficult issues, you know, as well. So yeah, I think, and then I've also, you know, probably through my life, there's been plenty of grief, you know, in other ways, and like, like losing a toy. Someone said earlier, definitely lost my favourite toy as a child. So, but that probably never got the attention that it really deserved.
So I'm gonna, before I come to you, April, I'm gonna, Milo, as well as, you know, same again. What are your thoughts on that?
With me, I'm probably the typical guy where I don't talk about it and then internalize it and then just constantly regret everything that, you know, was never said or done, or spending enough time with the people that have passed away, or the loss of whatever, any of that kind of stuff. So that's me.
Have you lost a toy though before? If we lighten it slightly,
I've lost toys. I've lost pets. I've lost. I should say, a couple of pets. Like I had a dog that died, and I had her for 9 years, and she was my best friend. She was like everything. And when she died, I literally just was bawling, and I was a full-grown adult, by the way. This isn't as a child. This was in my, and just like literally, it was just the worst thing ever. And it's amazing how much sorrow there was with that, you know. And then like my grandmother, same thing, when she passed away, her and I were really close. But the difference was, like with the dog, it was really sudden. It was like, you know, Monday, you know, we found out she had a tumor. By the following Monday, you know, I had to put her down. Whereas my grandmother, when she passed away, like we knew it was coming, you know, so we had time to process it and prepare ourselves for it, and like spend some more time with her and that kind of stuff. So it does make a difference how sudden it is and what those relationships are. But yeah, I cry alone in my bed with a bottle of alcohol. That's my solution.
Oh man,
I'm joking.
I actually thought he was going to say, because Milo's favourite thing, as we mentioned many times on this show, is the American cheese, real cheese snack, Cheez It. So I thought you may have found kind of some solace with a packet of Cheez It.
There you go. And I make jokes to cover up any sorrowful things. Go ahead.
So, you know, no, but I think it's probably important as well that at least, you know, you recognise that as well, which is also great. So April, what are your kind of thoughts on some of the survey responses and obviously the question itself to you personally?
Yeah, so some really interesting responses in that survey. Not surprising, most of them, to be honest, and equally some of the phrases that you've both used in terms of how we process grief and how we deal with grief. So we are taught from a really young age to not to process grief very well, in all honesty. So, and again, this isn't with bad intent. You know, our parents and teachers and other people talk to us and help us to process grief in the way that they were taught to process it. And it just becomes this ever kind of perpetual cycle of behaviour. And there's these six myths of grief and how we should deal with them. And some of these myths were said in those comments. So don't feel sad, don't feel bad, don't feel scared. We say these things to children all the time. Replace the loss, depending on what it is. Grieve alone. So, you know, cry alone, grieve alone. Grief just takes time. Time heals all wounds. This is another great myth. Be strong for others, and keep busy. And we're told this story right from the beginning. So whether it is, we lose a toy, we cry as a child, our parent says, don't worry, I'll buy you another one. Our beloved dog dies, and we're told, don't be sad, it's okay, we'll get a new dog. We cry because something's happened. If, we're upset, a parent, a relative, a sister, if you're going to cry, go and cry on your own in your room. Don't burden everybody else with your pain and with your grief and with your suffering. And these don't feel like a big deal at the time when we're being told this, but what the messages is sending to our brain is don't show your pain, don't burden others with your pain, grieve alone. We don't talk about things that upset us, and so this is just constantly embedded within us. And when we actually do encounter a loss that is really substantial, our first love is probably one of the ones that is that hurts the hardest, and often a friend or a parent might say, "Don't worry, there's plenty more fish in the sea." And again, we're told, like, forget about it. You can replace this loss. Don't be upset. And so this cycle continues until something really, really fundamental happens, and we don't know how to process it. And so we hide ourselves away, whether that is crying into our pillow on our own at night so nobody else can hear, or pretending that we're okay, or keeping busy, or distracting ourselves with hobbies, or in worst cases, alcohol or drugs. We're also give an example of a child that, perhaps comes home from school and they've had a fallout with their friends and they're crying and they're really upset. And their parent will say to them, "Oh, don't feel bad. Don't be sad. It's okay." They won't necessarily say you can find new friends, but they'll tell them not to feel bad. And they will say, small child, "Have a cookie. That'll make you feel better." Because the parent wants to stop this child crying, with good intent. So the child takes the cookie and suddenly the parent thinks that they're happy. That sadness, that grief, that loss hasn't gone away. They've just been distracted from that feeling. So they feel different. They don't necessarily feel better. But what they're then taught is that I probably can't speak my truth, because if I speak my truth, somebody's going to try and stop me. And this continues. And this is why, there's some great mediums there. Actually, Hattie, you spoke about, okay, you talk about it more now, but you used to do it through song. That's still a really beautiful way of expressing that emotion. It's releasing that in a way that works for you, and probably has helped a lot of other people through music by doing that. It's when those distractions aren't positive distractions, like substance abuse, that it becomes a real problem. Part of the work that I do with the grief recovery program is actually a step-by-step program to help people process all of the losses. So they often come to me with one thing that's current, but we end up working back right through a loss history graph of time from the day you were born, every loss that you've ever experienced. And you mentioned, Milo, around the difference between time and having something happen quite suddenly versus having a bit of time to process and to say goodbye, or to say all the things that you want to say. The grief, as a grief recovery specialist, I help people get complete with their losses. So where they haven't had the opportunity to do that, we go through a process that results in something called a completion letter, which is a letter to that person about all the things that you would want to say to them, the thank yous, the I forgive yous, the I'm sorries. And this isn't just for people that have passed away. This is for people that may be living, that you have to get complete with some grief. Loss of trust is a big one, loss of health. And you'll never, ever read it to that person. They never hear it, but you do read it out to another living human being, which when they're working with me will be me. And there's massive power in that. There's massive power in saying those words out loud that you need to say to that person, whether they're living or not with us anymore. So yeah, fascinating to hear some of the different takes on grief.
April, what do you say to those parents then that have the children that are coming then with a loss of something? Because yeah, as a parent, you want to be, it's okay, you want to comfort them and make them feel better. But so what do you say to do instead of that? Like, what's the alternative?
Yeah, it's a great question. And also I'm very conscious on the program to not suddenly make them feel really bad for all the things that they've said, because they go, "Oh my God, I say that to my daughter or son as well." And so there's another program that I run that is called Helping Children with Loss. And I deliver that in schools predominantly, and help teachers to have conversations with children about how to communicate their emotions. There's a couple of really good books, actually. There's a recent book, I can't remember who wrote it, but it's called something along the lines of The Conversations I Wish My Parents Had Had With Me. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's a really good guide for parents. And it's those kinds of reframing the question to a child. So rather than if they've fallen over on the floor and they're crying, rather than saying, don't cry, get up, you'll be okay, slap on the back, here's a cookie, they actually go, oh, I see you're upset. Talk to me about how you're feeling. Or they come home from school upset because something's happened or their pet dies. I can see you're sad there. Tell me what's going on for you. We just don't speak to children like that, like grown-ups, but actually they respond really well to it. And the result that the parent wants that child stops crying is usually the same, because they're suddenly verbalizing actually what's going on for them. And it's a really simple switch, but has a massive impact. The other thing that's really important is crying itself. So there is scientific, factual evidence that tells us that the chemicals that are in tears are actually healing. So the tears that come out of our eyes when we're sad versus the tears that come out of our eyes when we're happy actually have a different chemical combination in them. So when we're sad, the chemicals that come out are actually helping us to heal and feel better. So we all do it. We cry in front of somebody and we go, oh, I'm so sorry. And we wipe them away. A big rule on the grief recovery program is we don't wipe them away. If there's a bit of snot coming out of our nose, we tell people to, give that wipe. But in terms of tears,
let it all out. Yeah,
let them flow, because they're good for you. And we're too often taught to wipe the tears. Even again, a child, first thing we do is get a tissue and go, let's wipe those tears away. Meant with good intent, but actually let them flow. It's really good for you.
Yeah, it is really interesting in the sense that it's literally the things that you're like, the kind of the procedures, if you want to put it like that, seem so simple, and so common sense. It's like, why are we always brushing everything literally under the carpet? Like, oh no, yeah, moving on swiftly, rather than just having one simple question, which will actually address and likely resolve something quite well. And it's just fascinating anyway that you kind of touched on the whole kind of like timeline as well, and going back, all the way through to maybe to help someone address some grief that might be kind of like 2/3 of the way in their life at some point, but there may be like several other factors that it's impacted that as well, just because of all these, like, it's like a compounded timeline of grief, which obviously starts very, very tiny and subtle, but then it's like this kind of, it can consider like bandwagon, almost a snowball of grief almost, that we don't, like I say, we don't literally, we don't really don't look at it in that way from the outset, because we're continually kind of like rubbishing it, or almost, just saying, oh yeah, that didn't happen kind of thing, and then we move on, and then another little thing happens. It's certainly.
And actually, what's really fascinating is when you start to look at map out the loss history graph with an individual and the different losses that they've had in their life. And there's scales of loss. Some are obviously much bigger than others and have a bit bigger impact. But also, they're not the same for everybody. So one person's dog dying may be way more horrific and traumatic to another person versus another person's grandmother being to another person. So we put this kind of badge on loss that it's equal, and it's not. I think you use the words, Milo. It's about the relationship we had with that person or that thing or that situation that impacts how great that loss and therefore how great the grief is for us. And also when we map out the loss history graph, what's usually apparent 9 times out of 10 is there are patterns in everybody's life. We repeating patterns. So we, as human beings, fall into the same patterns of behavior time and time again. Now, I'll give a really simple example of that. Somebody might have an abusive father, and they will be drawn to males in their life that have similar patterns of behavior. It might not be as extreme. It might be just that they have a job and their boss is quite dominating or manipulative. They've got a husband or a partner that is perhaps more controlling in the relationship, not necessarily to the extreme, but they gravitate towards similar patterns in their life. And this is apparent for everybody. So therefore the losses tend to be repeated as well. And actually, if we can start to become more aware and identify that, we can go, why is this happening? And hopefully change the pattern to be a more productive pattern that serves us rather than one that limits us and creates more loss.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Okay, well, we should probably move on. April, are you going to stick with us for the rest of the show?
I'd love to if you're okay with me doing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I reckon we'll let you stay. Maybe listen to Hattie.
Another song from Hattie.
Well.
She played one for us earlier. It was fantastic.
Oh, that would be amazing. Yeah, I'll put myself on mute just in case the dog barks, which is
no
amazing that it
not
hasn't
yet,
already.
Hattie, not yet. We got one more question for you though before you pull out the guitar.
Okay.
Speaking of music though, so on the subject of if you had to keep just one item, possessions in the world with you, what would that be and why?
I was going to think about this and I forgot. If I'm being really boring, I'm gonna give two options. If I'm really boring, I'm going to take my guitar because I actually do like, I could write songs. I could get off my chest how sad I was that like everything else in the world was gone. And if I am being real, probably my mattress because I love it and it's so comfy and I love sleeping.
I just love the idea of you hauling it around too, like throwing up on the back and be like, I'm not letting this go.
Yeah, you're going nowhere.
Just strapped up. That's it, literally. That's the only thing in the world you've got now. Right.
But it could double up as other things as well. Like it could be like a raft.
A shield.
A shield.
Lots of. Definitely, you could.
Do you have a specific guitar that it would be? Because I see you've got a few behind you there. Is there out of them? Is there like it would be this one?
Oh, it would have to be the acoustic. This one because this is my golden oldie. Spin with me the whole journey.
So how long have you had that? Literally from very, really young age.
Well, from when I started playing guitar. So that was like 12 years. I've had it.
Yeah, I know that's still a good chunk of time to your association with that instrument.
Yeah, and pretty much all of my songs have been written on that guitar. So
awesome.
Yeah,
and because I obviously I really liked you initially. Well, I knew that you was going to probably say your guitar anyway, and then you flipped puns going on, flipped it to the mattress. Your opening one was a pretty cheesy answer, really. And on this show, we love talking about cheese on Rip It Up.
What a segue!
I have got to ask you, what is one of your favourite cheeses?
I really love cheese, so it's really hard to choose. But Comté, gonna go with it. Comté.
Go in the Comté. Yeah, Comté's a good choice. Have you heard that one, Milo?
I've heard of like I didn't when it was your accent, it threw me off.
Comté.
No, I mean, Comté is nice. That's got kind of like a toughish skin around, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. And it's like
quite a creamy cheese.
Yeah, it's good.
Excellent.
What about you guys? Well, I want to know what your favorite cheeses are.
I don't have a favorite cheese. I like all kinds of different cheeses. Yeah.
No, I like kind of like some of the kind of like the creamier Stiltons, different ones. Like because up in Derbyshire, there's quite a few different Stiltons that you can grab as well, and obviously some of the Somerset stuff's great, but I'm always a good fan of what's the Mexican one? Pretty nice, kind of like Manchego. That's the one.
Oh yeah,
is nice.
Delicious.
Yeah, I'd always go for a bit of that. And this is coming from someone who didn't really like cheese that much, or was told they didn't like cheese that much when they were younger. So
oh wow, you've come a long way.
Maybe this is my kind of grief process of cheese. Literally, and bringing it through as a topic. Who knows? No, I love cheese.
So what we're going to do here, guys, we're going to close it out with a song from you, Hattie. But before we go, question for both of you. April, where can people go to find out more about your services, your counseling services?
Yeah, so I guess you can put it in the comments below, can you, the website?
Yep, absolutely.
It's griefuk.org/April. You can also find me on LinkedIn. So I'll give my details around coaching and other stuff as well. But no, happy to answer any questions anyone's got.
Perfect. And Hattie, same question for you.
Yeah, I've got a website, which is hattiewhitehead.com. And I use Instagram mostly to post about my dog. So if you want to see my dog, you can check that. That's Hattie Whitehead Music. I am playing at Earth in Hackney on the 20th of November. So that's very exciting. Yeah.
Excellent.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay, so you want to play us out with a song? And what will you be playing with it for us?
This song is called Read My Mind, and it's also from my forthcoming EP.
Sorry, I didn't hear the name of that.
Oh, sorry. It's called Read My Mind.
Read My Mind. Okay.
Cool. And just before that, I'm just going to say, obviously, thanks to April from Grief Recovery Method and Hattie, obviously, and then to all our viewers that are watching us, and also helps us kind of with all their amazing comments that just wouldn't, we wouldn't have a show if it wasn't for the public comments. So, yep, Hattie, now the floor's yours.
So alone in this room, there's a being right by me with nothing to do as I cry. Let me explain it to you. It's like talking to a crowd that just stares straight on through, and I try, but we fight and we fight and we fight. I need you now, can't you see? Just close your eyes, count to 3. I thought you might try to read my mind. Situation is new, abandoned by a lover and left to consume the fear, the worry, the hate, sadness and confusion of fate. The sorry little clues that I give seem obvious to me, but to you don't exist. So I lie and I lie and I lie, despite of the light in my eyes. I need you now, can't you see? This is the craziest that I've ever been. I thought you might try to read my mind. Ooh,
Wow,
Lovely.
beautiful.
thanks.
Hey, Kev. So what do we got coming up on the show next?
Yeah, Milo, next time on Rip It Up, it'll be a bumper Halloween live special of the show.
Ooh. Okay. So we're going live.
Yeah, that's right, Milo. For the first time, we'll be 100% live, something that we've talked about, tried to do, but we've got several guests that are going to be returning to join us that we've had previously, along with some spooky tales, ghost stories, spoken word, live music, and maybe a few prizes to be won. Maybe give away a few badly drawn bamboos or something. But yeah, and there'll be a discussion about Halloween too as well.
So be sure to join us as we rip it up.